Hello, I'm Jim Miller. Reggie and Terrence are on leave tonight. The Flipside starts right now. Welcome to the show. There are few people in this county that have spent more time studying the county now as a retired person, but also even before as a former county commissioner, than Ron Bowers. And we're happy to have Ron back on the show with us this evening. Ron, welcome. It's been way too long.
I miss it. I really do. There's so many things. I watch it a good bit. I enjoyed the makeup. I enjoyed some of the guests that you have, and I think Terrence and Reggie bring a lot to the table in a different perspective. And I think it's a healthy perspective, and maybe one day I'll think about joining them to bring a perspective that I have versus a perspective that they have, and we might have some good dialogue, some levity, and the opportunity to advance our community even more than what we're doing now.
Well, and Ron, that's the reason I wanted to have you on. We talk a lot on this show about headlines, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's a lot happening at the county. There's a lot happening in the municipalities. And you seem to have your finger, maybe not intimately involved with all of those, but you seem to have an understanding. And I'd like to get into some of those if we can tonight. We're going to call this kind of a grab bag or a potpourri of the issues that are facing our community, our city, our state, our county. So let's start there. But before we start that, let's talk about your recent run for office. How was that? Would you do it again? Talk to me about that whole process.
Well, you know, a year prior to doing it, I decided one day with my background in the military, my conservative background in fiscal matters, and a lot of my opinions on things, that it was time, as many people had encouraged me, and several business folks came to me and said, Ron, why don't you run as a Republican? Why don't you get on the Republican ballot? Well, I decided to do that, and I registered as a Republican, and immediately there were some folks, a good friend of mine, Jerry DeWolf, who was the head of the Republican Central Committee at the time, didn't think, well, maybe he's running for the wrong reason. So Jerry and I talked, and goodness, after a while, we were able to talk about a lot of different things. I got to be friends with these kids, understand a little bit where he was coming from. He understood where I was coming from. So it was something that was extremely worthwhile. But I can tell you this: I don't care if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. Both sides have issues, and in having issues, there's a lot of help that's needed. And I think collaboration needs to be foremost in our minds on how to solve some of the issues that we have, whether it's county, whether it's city, whether it's state. And also understand that when you put up a candidate that is a mediocre candidate and they lose, don't criticize the person that won. Put up strong candidates and you can win.
Were there any surprises for you in this current election cycle in terms of people? I had one, quite frankly, and that was Jason Millott. I'm sure this new person who's taken over the office is qualified, is thoughtful, but Jason's done a lot for the community in my view, and that's one that surprised me. Were there any of those for you?
No, Jason wasn't even a surprise. It wasn't even a surprise to Jason. When you get into a county that is the way this county votes now, they're voting on a Republican ticket, not for a Democrat. How do you overcome that? If I would have spoke more to the right on different issues, I probably could have done better. But just like one of your panelists said, he didn't stand a Chinaman's chance, that was me, to win. Well, I didn't stand a chance running the type of race that I ran, which would be getting on running on issues, running on what it took. But if you can recall, in the election prior to this one, when Brian Albert ran for sheriff, he came really close to beating Sheriff Mullendore then. And as things go, and as Jason saw that there was going to be an issue because it's run on a Republican ticket, and that's how the people vote. Does that say it's wrong? It isn't wrong, but that doesn't say that everybody is the most qualified, because everybody isn't the most qualified when you just vote for one political party.
On a statewide basis, and Washington County was probably one of the few places that you could point to in America, or at least in Maryland, that we did have a Republican wave, if you will, which everybody expected at the national level, which, at least in my mind, never materialized, and I think that's evidenced by the current makeup of the Congress and the Senate. But on the state level, Brooke Delegate, a Democrat from Brooke
Grossman.
Grossman, excuse me.
Yeah.
A Democrat from the City of Hagerstown district won election over her Republican challenger. Does that surprise you?
No. Brooke did her homework. Brooke knows what she's doing. Brooke grew up the hard way. Brooke was very involved, was homeless in Baltimore City with her mom years ago, came up the way, and I don't care how much that you went in to try to destroy her, in some of those instances, truth bears out over politics that's played in a manner which is not conducive to it's conducive to theater, but it's not conducive to theater. So it's Brooke had made a name. She's in the trenches. She's working to help people, whether you're in Baltimore City, whether you're in the suburbs of Baltimore, Washington, or whether you're in any city or town around the state of Maryland. She can speak directly to the issues that we encounter here. I don't care if you're going to a place for breakfast in the east end of Hagerstown where there's a lot of problems, whether you're in the hotel at the old Venice, whether you were in the hotel out at the old Ramada there at Hager Hall, or where you are, there is an overall problem there that she understood and can deal with those on a statewide basis.
Another change we had at the state level was Delegate Mike McKay became Senator Mike McKay. Thoughts on that one?
In that particular, Jake Shade, who was the president of the county commissioners
in Allegheny County,
right, was supported and endorsed by long-term Senator Edwards. So Senator George Edwards at the time endorsed Jake Shade, who was the president of the county commissioners. Jake ran, a campaign, but then Mike McKay. Mike has been a very diligent worker. He carries the freight. I know he would do things for people, getting suits and things pressed from his dry cleaners back and forth. He's kind of been a people-oriented guy. I know there was a time that we had a new drop-off point up in Frostburg that, or just on the other side in LaVale. We had a drop-off point there, and he came to it, and he spent a lot of time with us, and that was with Horizon Goodwill. So he had a working relationship that I think paid dividends for him, in his quest to become a state senator.
Great. Let's move our attention for a minute to the county. You ran for a county office. Clearly you had a platform. What are the big issues you see facing Washington County over the next 3 to 5 years?
I've said it the last 10 years, the last 5 years, and I'll say it again tonight. Water. Water is the key issue, and they still have their heads buried in the sand, but they've started to come out. I think there has been a little more discussion with the current Board of County Commissioners, and I think now it is on their radar of the need to work with the City of Hagerstown to make major improvements to the R.C. Wilson water treatment facility on Bottom Road in Williamsport. and that's going to have to happen. But the county staff and the city staff, the city is under Nancy Hausreth, who is the director of the water and the sewer areas, working with the county staff and the city staff. They know exactly what needs to be done. And honestly, I see the Board of County Commissioners making a move to start to bring that to a reality, the necessity of increasing and over probably a 10 to 15 year plan. It's going to cost $150 to $300 million to upgrade that facility in the Williamsport area to disseminate water throughout the county, because you've got the same lines. And if you want pressure, we're fighting constantly in certain areas of the county for water pressure. What's no wonder. Lines are old. Lines have issues. The capacity of the plant, what the plant was built to have in the 1920s and what's needed now is astronomically different. How we do that, how we get the new lines, you can't just say, well, we're going to build a new plant. You may build a new plant right beside of the current plant and be able to use the same lines to get throughout the county and the city, but that is, my opinion, the number one issue for fire suppression, for residential. We're talking about bringing we need housing. Housing is major because of the economic development that's taking place. Without significant housing coming into the county and the city, which is going to take water, which is going to take wastewater treatment. You've got the Antietam Creek, the Hagerstown plant on the Antietam Creek. The county and the city are working to give that more capacity by removing capacity from the Antietam Creek plant around to Mulligansville and down to the Conica-Jig plant, which has plenty of capacity to help the city and will help the county. So there are ways, but I do see people beginning to listen.
You mentioned housing.
Yes.
Housing is certainly an issue. Of course, we don't know what this next few months or even year or more of the economy is going to do to us in terms of housing prices and how that will impact. But the reality is, aside from the fact that we were already not overflowing with housing, now that we have many workers that are able to work from home in a post-COVID environment, obviously, at least in my opinion, that's going to impact the number of people that choose to move into a more rural area, if only for the pricing. Because as much as we might want to complain about real estate prices in Washington County, they're still nothing like they are in other counties in Maryland. How do we deal with that, and how do we stop from becoming do we want to become another Germantown or Gaithersburg or Frederick even? Stop
building such big houses. I mean, Ryan Homes and your different home builders, they need to start, or there needs to be a new firm come in competition that builds smaller homes, way smaller homes. You need some 950 square foot to 1,100 square foot houses.
Like what we saw go up after World War II out in the Pennsylvania Avenue region.
Right across from North High.
But the problem with that, would you agree that the problem with that is just like at McDonald's when you can supersize things and it costs them marginally more to build the extra house, but they can sell it at a much higher profit. What is the motive of these builders to build smaller houses?
Maybe the motive will be the impact that it'll be to build a bigger house. Maybe there becomes a penalty on building a bigger house. Maybe there becomes some type of a fee that goes on from building bigger house. It's got to stop. There's enough wasted space in a lot of these homes that you could have a small home. You need small villages for the homeless type people. You can't be putting homeless people in a hotel or an old hotel, or taking a new hotel and making it an old hotel, and before long it's falling down by demolition, by neglect. And I think that whole housing issue and the issue with the homeless and everything needs to be looked at in a totally different way. There's too many people that's in the mix right now calling the shots. There needs to be an independent person come together And I've said for about a year and a half now, I can see Judge Brett Wilson becoming an independent person sitting in front of a lot of these different organizations, recreating how we deal with the homeless population. I don't think it's going to happen with a city official, a county official, or a state official coming in, or somebody from the feds. It's going to take a local person that has respect, that has served in a legislature, has run for public office, understands what the problems are, and you deal with folks like that, and you deal with some of our homeless people. Do you realize some of the leaders in this community now that have been homeless? There are several that have been homeless. Habitat should become involved in the housing conversations. They're not involved now. So as you get all of these organizations, we need to come up with smaller houses and quit housing people. And I don't know how you prohibit it, how you keep people from buying up these old hotels and turning them into housing units. $1,500 a month. People living in these hotel rooms for $1,500 a month. Then you go demolition by neglect. If they can afford $1,500 a month, they ought to be able to afford $800 a month for something small instead of trying to put them in the massive hotels that they are now.
You know, speaking of hotels, and we have one in particular that I pass often out on the dual highway. Talk to me about your notion of what should happen to those and frankly other abandoned properties in the county or the municipalities.
I am number one. There are a lot of parking lots. There are a lot of buildings that are big buildings that need to be leveled to the ground. The land reworked because the infrastructure is there. You got water, you got streets, you got sidewalks, you got gas, you've got electricity, everything is there. You've got all of these parking lots around Hagerstown should become economic development lots and be sold because of the parking we have. But there's got to be something, again, different done. Just because they're there, just because it was the Ramada or it was the Venice, things have to change. You can't keep that superstructure there and expect it to ever come back. And then what do we have? We've got the old Sheridan out on the dual highway. And that's sitting there. There it sits, a great big parking lot area filled with some cars from a car dealership, a building that was once the prime area for all kind of venues for community service, for state, for everything, and one of the best restaurants and hotels that you could have. What's it doing now? Sitting there. So how long do we keep these things sitting, taking up ground space, and going out into a farm field someplace and building? I think that all needs to stop, and there needs to be a refocus on land that has the infrastructure there. It's called smart growth. And we seem to get away from being able to deal with smart growth in this county, city, and state.
Ron, it is no surprise that you have a lot to say. It's been a while since you've been here, and we appreciate your opinion. We're going to pause there for a second, and we'll be back with you in just a minute. Stay with us. We'll be back with Ron Bowers. Welcome back. We're here once again with Ron Bowers, who is sharing his opinion on many topics, and we still have a lot left to talk about, Ron. Let's talk about another election issue, and that is the notion of the number of warehouses and warehouse facilities that are being built in our county. What say you on that? Good investment, bad investment?
Number one, the thing that people really need to understand, because I'm opposed to it in a way myself, of to what they're doing. But what they have done is kept within the boundaries of where they can be built. Back years ago, within a quarter of a mile or a half a mile, quarter of a mile to a half a mile, they could build from a highway interchange. And they're pretty much keeping within that highway interchange. The thing that really disturbs me is there is no requirement that those people building the large facilities that they have, these large box warehouses, that they're required to do anything. Number one, there should be a requirement for X amount of square footage of solar on the buildings. Number two, there should be a payment to the community and for community service. You know, we used to have all the business that helped Little Leagues, that helped the community. You don't have that now. We've lost contact. And they say, well, you can't force them. Well, heck, you can't force them. We don't ever have the discussions to even talk about it. We seem to turn a deaf ear on talking about creative ways to change things today. It's a lot easier to go to a meeting at 10:30 with the county and get out at 2 than it is to go to work at 8:30, work a day, and really talk about what it is you need to change in your community. A lot of those things need to change. There needs to be a paradigm shift. A lot of people don't even have a clue what a paradigm shift is. But there needs to be a paradigm shift where you don't do the same thing you've always done and expect a different result. And that's not Einstein's theory of insanity either. That's changing the paradigm of where it is that we want to go. And because I don't think some of your elected officials today want to give the time, take the time, or study up to come up with creative and new ideas of how to deal with the big warehouses. What do you do when those warehouses are not filled anymore?
Right. Not if.
They're
when.
going to be. Is there going to be a real estate investment trust? It's called a REIT that's going in to redo them. What's happening right now with Citibank?
Exactly.
Citibank's just sitting there. But if you, and I think you've had Julie Rahm on the program. Julie Rahm at Valley Mall, Julie has taken the Valley Mall under her leadership and working other ways.
When other properties are closing up, folding up like cheap chairs.
And she's doing a great job.
Amazing job.
They're creative. But unless you've got the elected official that's got the gumption, that takes the time, that don't just go to ribbon cutting ceremonies, shows their picture at a ribbon cutting ceremony or giving a check to somebody until you get those people engaged in what they're being paid to be engaged in, and that's redoing what the community has currently available to do and reusing land that's just sitting there doing nothing. So I just think there needs to be a totally new approach to elected officials all over on looking at what can be done instead of sitting back all the time complaining about what somebody else is doing or what somebody else said. It's time to get out and make some changes. How many times have we talked about water and sewer? I was wrong. Remember, I got buried years ago for talking about things that should happen or shouldn't happen. There wasn't one time. And I would have you say, name me one of those things I talked about over the years that wasn't a good idea ultimately. You'll have a hard time finding it because you'll be criticized for things. I'll be criticized for things I'm saying now. That's okay. But people need to start thinking about how to carry it out, how it can be done, because it can be done. But it's going to take time and conversations and subcommittees and committees and ideas. We got people around this county with all kind of great ideas. We got people that make some ridiculous comments sometimes, but sometimes in a ridiculous comment, there is a grain of truth of something that will work. How do you sort that out? How do you take it? How do you have all your people participate in conversations? It takes a leader, and that's why I'm saying I see Judge Brett Wilson as a person that can sit as a moderator in some of these different forums to help move all of us together forward.
Why Brett Wilson? Why bring that name up? I mean, he's a judge. That's not what he's doing.
He's a judge with a good personality. He's got a great demeanor. He understands issues. People listen to him. People respect him. And so he's a judge. I don't say that that's all he's got to do, set and write opinions in the circuit court on a case that he heard or run his area. He can be out and doing some other things. There's a man that I have the utmost respect for over the years because of all that he stands for and all that he does. I've seen him work with Bill Gertner with gatekeepers. Bill Gertner was on this show before, and we talked about gatekeepers. And I see those two guys sit down and talk about getting a person out of prison. Who wants to talk about, well, what do we do with that person coming out of prison? Did we help them? Did we help rehabilitate them? Did we help them get jobs? Did we help them do things? He sat down and talked about all those. You bring Judge Long from the Eastern Shore up representing Governor Hogan and talked about different things of helping people. A good not a retired, but a good judge that's well respected can make things happen. And who's going to tell him, well, you don't know what you're talking about? Because you might be before him someday. So you're going to listen to him, and he's got the clout to make it happen.
Let's talk about a couple of specific issues if we can. Let's start with the smaller of the two that I want to hit, and that is the truck stop in Williamsport. So there was a kerfluffle, if you will, right after the election because the new county commissioners overruled something to stop the truck stop. They passed a new rule, and now that's potentially being challenged in court. What do you say to that one?
First of all, I don't think that what they did had anything to do with that truck stop. That truck stop had already been in the mill. I don't approve of that truck stop for one major thing. And I don't care if Don Bowman's listening or who's listening to it. I didn't support it. I don't support it because it's the Diamond Interchange. The Diamond Interchange is an interchange where when you come south and wanted to go to the truck stop, you would come south on 81, turn off, then you had to make a left-hand turn across traffic to go up to the hill to get it. And everybody that is making those turns has to go across the lane of traffic. It is a terrible place to have a truck stop. Terrible place. And it's the same thing. But Washington County, stop and think about how many clover leaves we have. And those clover leaves are at maximum right now. We don't need more truck stops in the county. We have enough in our 12-mile stretch to accommodate people. If Martinsburg wants truck stops, put them there. Pennsylvania wants truck stops, put them there. Because a lot of people that I've seen testify, a truck driver from Martinsburg testifying, well, put one in Martinsburg. Put one in over at Spring Mills. Put one someplace else. But they have the same kind of things getting off the highway on a Diamond Interchange where they don't have the clover leaf. Truck stops, we have enough truck stops in Washington County. And I do not favor the one in Williamsport. I never have. And I have voiced my opinion about, about what. See, originally Love's Travel Plaza was going to go to that exit 1 area in Williamsport. Love's Travel Plaza went where? They went on Showalter Road, which is a cloverleaf interchange to be able to go in. Right-hand turns, and you're in the truck stop. And that's the way it is, whether you're going north or whether you're going south. So those are the kinds of things, but we don't spend the time. Was there a fault? Yes, there was a fault. Those kind of discussions should have been handled 2 years ago, a year ago. And I don't care what your name is, doesn't guarantee you got the right to build wherever you want to build.
Okay. Let's talk about manufacturing. We have new manufacturing coming to Washington County in the form of this for the subway cars. Talk about that.
Hitachi.
Yes.
Rail cars.
Yes.
Another stroke of genius that was pulled off by the state and by local economic development. Susan Small, Susan Grimes with the county, John Horowitz with the county. These folks did a yeoman's job, and so did the county. So they did a yeoman's job on a manufacturing plant. Manufacturing's not dead. Manufacturing can be brought back, and there's evidence that it could. It just takes the right team, the right place, and how to do it. They're going to be an overwhelming success. But I would caution us. We also had one years ago, which was Dutcher Motors. Remember Dutcher Motors? They were going to make a special van that would carry handicapped people, and Dutcher Motors started there where the Coca-Cola plant is now on Western Maryland Parkway. And that went along really well for a while, but then they lost their momentum, they lost their marketing ability, the market went south on them, and they went out of business. So I think our manufacturing base, look at what Mac's done. Look at how Volvo has reinvented itself over and over to keep up with modern times. And what are they doing? They're an overwhelming success. JLG, look at what JLG, they may not all be here, they may be right across the line in Pennsylvania, but that's okay. We have people that work there. These folks know what they're doing. And when you have people that know what they're doing, a good county staff that was working with them to get them there, there's a lot of successes we're yet to see.
And there's a lot of questions we have yet to ask, but we're going to pause here again. Stay with us. We'll be back with Ron Bowers in 3 minutes. We're back once again with Ron Bowers, who's sharing a number of opinions on a number of topics. Ron, let's go back to some county-related issues. Some would say that when several of the commissions at the county level, for example, Economic Development, the Airport Commission, when they were re-envisioned, they lost their teeth. They lost their ability to govern as they were originally intended to do. What say you on that?
First of all, the County Economic Development didn't lose their teeth. They lost their whole body. There is no Economic Development Commission. I don't think it's proper. I think they need an Economic Development Commission. I think the business community fell flat on its face by not constituting when the county gave them the right to do it. But it's obvious there are some things the business community can and can't do. Organize an economic development, they've had a hard time. If the county says we're going to have an Economic Development Commission, as we've had over the years, and you have the proper membership, you can have a well-run, well-oiled machine that can work to bring your manufacturing in, whether we brought Citibank in, Mack Truck in, Dutcher Motors, or whatever the major company was, but you still need that Economic Development Commission. That Economic Development Commission keeps everybody honest, keeps staff honest, keeps elected officials honest, and I think working with the city, with the county, with the chamber, with the Greater Hagerstown Committee, there's a lot that can be done.
Now, what about the Airport Commission?
I don't even know why we have an Airport Commission, to be honest with you. I don't know what they do, when they do it. We've got a great airport. I just don't see a viable airport commission that's got any teeth to do anything. Maybe it's because we have a great airport and we're satisfied with just having a great airport. But I would point out how many executive directors of the airport we've had over the years. Why is that? What is in the DNA of the airport directors that we hire that they're not staying? Is it an inactive airport commission? I've talked to people at PIA, Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics. Listen to them. They've got the funding now through Congressman Trone, I think, and others, to double the size of Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics. And I think there's a lot more. Sometimes I do not think that the county should be in the airport business. I'm not so sure we couldn't have subcontract that out to have another person to go in there that's not run by the county, maybe overseen with, an airport commission. But you never hear a debate on it. There's never a discussion. There's never a debate. So it's. Can I sit here and say something? Sure. It'll make somebody upset. And they'll say he don't know what he's talking about. Well, let's sit down and talk about it, see what they do know, see what they know.
But would you agree that the airport and the surrounding area has been a key in the economic development that we have seen in this county? There's a lot of great businesses like PIA. So whether the commission has teeth or not, clearly there's a lot of activity going on there, and I have to think that they played some part in that.
Do you want a lot of activity I don't know what you categorize as a lot. PIA is one thing.
Right.
Maybe 2 or 3 others. Or do you want 10 or 15?
Sierra Nevada.
Well, Sierra Nevada is there, but how do you complement Sierra Nevada? How do you complement the rebuilding people? How do you complement other people? How do you get more flights in other places? You've got that entire business park where Amazon's got a food warehouse. You've got all of that. You've got that big building at Fairchild, which is doing a whole lot of different things. And in doing that, what type of ancillary business, accessory uses of business based on zoning to airport? How much of that can be done? There is a lot that could be done that isn't even being thought about by anybody, that because you don't have an economic development commission. I still wonder some days what the Greater Hagerstown Committee does. I've always been a constructive critic of how the Greater Hagerstown Committee is run, or how it isn't run. What new things are they doing? What good conversation do they have? Because one thing for sure, you don't hear too much about it.
Well, let's push to that for a second. Let's talk about what I'll call the ancillary agencies that play a part, and hopefully a viable part in shaping things that happen. You have Chief, you have the Chamber.
Don't get me started on Chief.
You have the Greater Hagerstown. My goal here is to get you started, Ron. Tell me about these organizations. Tell me about what they do that's good. Tell me about what you'd like to see them focus on as we move into the future.
I think they all do a great job. I think they all have a lot of job, but I think there's too much conflict of interest. I think with the conflict of interest, there's too much not happening that could be happening because of conflicts of interest. I'm talking about the bridge over the Antietam Creek. I'm talking about Professional Boulevard, which is yet to be widened at Eastern Boulevard back to the bridge, so you can cross the bridge that's been built for a couple of years, and on up to Yale Drive, around the roundabout, and then on over to Robinwood and over to the college to the left and to Meredith to the right. That all needs to be done, and within that, the day's coming where that whole area will be run by the City of Hagerstown. So right now, all these years and $30+ million spent, we don't have one tenant or client yet there, but you will hear that they do. But, you know, my good friend Greg Snook runs Chief. Greg's also on the hospital board. Greg's also on the board of trustees at the college. Greg's also working with the stadium authority, in downtown with the stadium, and also involved with the Hager 5 and the different buildings down there. Can all of those things be done that there's not a legitimate conflict of interest? What are we talking about right now? We're talking about selling, the potential sale of the Herald Mail building. We paid $5.2 million for a building that was valued at $3.2 million. It couldn't sell it for $1.5 million. We paid him $5.2 million. We didn't even need the building for the ball team. So now they're talking about selling off the Herald Mail. Okay, I can see him selling off, but I think the proceeds of that should go to the city to finish their parking deck that they're short money on, or that they should go back, because they've already spent $5.2 million for it. Money should get back in to the downtown area to beef it up, because I don't think they needed the whole thing to begin with. But again, there's just too much conflict of interest, in my opinion, of people that's all doing the same thing, and there's no discussions on how to do it. I've always been in favor of a stadium downtown, always. I support it. I think Blackie Bowen, Jimmy Hosaffel, Don Bowman, and those guys have did a yeoman's job of bringing it there. They'll be open in 2024. I have no doubt about that. Going down and looking at it now, how they took remember we always talked about the amount of water pumped out of the Herald Mail building into a 100-year-old storm drain. That's all been demolished and all been rebuilt. The Cultural Arts Trail, the Antietam Paper Company, how that's going to be rebuilt, and the CVB with Dan Spedden and the guys, how that's all going to take place. And as that all takes place, there's still no discussions overall about how it's going to look, what's the infrastructure, how are you going to get the roads and everything into it, out of it, How's the new parking deck going to work that goes in back of where Hagerstown Trust used to be? And that's the one that the city's got money, but they're short on money now because the bid came in high. But if they're going to sell the Herald Mail building, which they already spent $5.2 million, that money that they get from it should go into that parking deck and into other areas around there. But those discussions aren't made because the same people's doing everything. I don't agree with it.
All right. We're going to pause here again, but we have still a few more questions, so we'd like to keep you around for one more segment. Stay with us. We'll be back with Ron Bowers after these messages. Welcome back. Again, we're here with Ron Bowers. Ron, thank you again for joining us. It's been a pleasure so far. I can't wait to hear what we talk about next.
Well, you know, when I got the call this morning, and I was preparing for a Goodwill board meeting, today was our annual meeting, and I thought, should I do it or shouldn't I do it? Because honest to great, I think about this stuff on a daily basis.
Well, that's why you're here, Ron. And there are going to be those that disagree with you. Frankly, I disagree with you on some of your points. There are going to be those that agree with you, but I think we owe it to ourselves to have an open, honest discussion. And if we don't include people like you that have spent literally their lifetime looking at this county and thinking about this county, in my opinion, altruistically, I think we're listening to the wrong folks.
It's easy to come on here and not ruffle any feathers.
It is. Well, let's get back to the feather ruffling. Let's talk about senior citizens in Washington County, Ron.
Yeah. Through the Commission on Aging, my good friend Ed Lowe, back a couple years ago, said, should I consider membership or going on the board at the Commission on Aging? I said, not unless you want to become president of the board and make some things happen, change a few things, Ed. So Ed thought about it, and Ed's been on the show here way back years ago, and Ed went on the board to get a more feeling about seniors. And honest to gracious, with the Meals on Wheels programs we have, with the other programs that we have, and how they fund senior citizens in Frederick County, Washington County versus Cumberland area, and out into Oakland, you would be shocked of how much more other communities put into the senior citizens areas, the Meals on Wheels programs, and per senior citizen, how low in comparison to those other counties Washington County is. It isn't even close how much more Cumberland puts in.
Is it possible
senior citizens.
that there are some efficiencies that we have that are not available in those other counties? I mean, are you suggesting that we're not providing services we should? Or is it possible that maybe we're more efficient or we have more volunteers or whatever the case may be?
If we didn't have lines of hundreds of people standing in line for Meals on Wheels and other services, I'd say you're right. So, no. So the issue is how much money's actually put into the budget. I won't make the comparison that some people think I might make right now, but when Grandma and Grandpa can't get enough money where a pet can get more money than Grandma and Grandpa, there's an issue in my opinion. Okay, whether that's divisive or whether it isn't, I can't see us moving forward to where one group gets the money, another group of people that's paid their taxes, that's led the community, that's done things, can't get the services that they rightfully deserve after what they've done. Because of what? Is it because the nutrition of a meal is such that it costs more? It costs the same in Frederick County, Cumberland, and other areas as it does here. But we don't have the budget that the other areas in the state have. We haven't seen fit to fund Grandma and Grandpa. That's me. That's my generation, that's out there. But there's people that are homebound. A lot of people homebound. You remember people that spent hours and hours a day delivering meals and stuff. Now just trying to get on the programs impossible because they don't have enough to go around. That needs to be changed. There's no narrative except the budget hearing sometime, which you go to a budget hearing, make a plea to get money in a budget hearing. I don't think that's a place that to determine whether or not who gets the money in the community should take place. It's a philosophy. If the philosophy is pets get the money and seniors don't, both of them are necessary. Both of them are needed. They both deserve what they get. But don't shortchange the senior based on other programs.
Let's move to the state a minute. We have a new governor after what I would consider to be a very successful term with our former governor. Obviously, this man, as a Democrat, is going to make some changes. I have been pleasantly surprised at some of the comments I've heard come out of some of my Republican friends that while he is a political neophyte, they like his thought processes in many cases, they like his ideas, they disagree with him on certain issues and certain ideas, but overall they were hopeful. What say you?
Anybody that calls him a political neophyte when they called the election after 1% of the vote was in, better recalculate what they call a political neophyte. Okay?
Well, I think specifically around some of his appointments, there's been some questions about that. And
by
some
gracious,
questions.
everybody that makes appointment, there's things that you don't know that the person did. There's things that go wrong. I can understand that. I certainly can understand that. Political neophyte, absolutely not. I enjoyed, number one, that he was in the military, that he had a couple of different tours in the military. Number two, I was a major supporter of Kelly Schultz. I didn't support Westmore. I supported Kelly Schultz. They put up somebody that everybody said there's no way that person will win, and he didn't. So if you put up a candidate that runs, and now you have more and what he stands for, I was a big supporter of Governor Hogan, both terms. And in doing that, I liked the things that he did. Now, I don't know, the time is right now out on what Moore will do, what will the things that he does, how will they work out? This area never elects a governor in the state of Maryland anyway. We never elect a United States senator, okay, here. We do not elect a member of Congress here. So, and a president. None of those positions will ever be elected from the county that will be in office. How do you deal with it then? So, with Hogan did a wonderful job. There's so many things that you can attribute to him. Will this man do the same thing? Will he follow in what Hogan's footsteps? Has he been out here? He was at Hitachi. He was at Eastern Elementary School reading to kids. He's been out here. He's been on the streets. Time will tell whether he brings things here, as Hogan did, or will he not. So I can't say what he will do, but I know what Hogan did, and I know the challenges that Moore will have here. I hope that he takes advantage of the great people in Western Maryland, and I hope that the people in Western Maryland welcome him with open arms and not just be critical as we tend to be sometimes.
Well, isn't being critical the national conversation now? Isn't that what everyone does? It's not about, at the national level, 100 to 1, we see hearings on something that somebody else did versus what things can we do to benefit our populace.
And you know what we've not done in this meeting and here today? We haven't talked about those issues because I could care less about them. We want to run Washington County, the state of Maryland, and Hagerstown, and all other 8 incorporated municipalities. Don't get caught up in debating issues that amount to nothing. That's where people lose out on getting things done because they spend all of that time doing that. Let's deal here. Let's deal with the homeless problem. Let's deal with the water problem. Let's deal with the other problems and not get caught up on national issues.
I don't disagree with that. But there are times when we are a county and we deal with county issues. There are times, though, that when we're part of a bigger element. And
I don't see your officials doing that. I see people doing that.
In the area where we live, that bigger element incorporates not only Frederick and Cumberland counties to our east, or Allegheny County to our east and west, it also incorporates southern Pennsylvania, it incorporates the Panhandle, and the problems that we have here, if we solve them, and we saw this quite frankly with some of the homeless population, the homeless people from other communities were dying to come here because we had organizations like the Community Action Council and others that were solving these problems. So it was an advertisement. So I think we do have to look at the bigger picture.
Sometimes you can be a victim by your own success.
Exactly.
And hopefully that's not the case here. We've had Goodwill in here for many years.
We have.
Where they come from, the amount of things that they do to help people. Habitat, you're starting to see more about Habitat and building smaller houses, getting more done. You're going to see a lot more to that. I think the new mayor, we haven't touched on the new mayor, I think the new mayor, Takesha Martinez, will do a tremendous job working with the county commissioners to come up with new ideas. I see people being able to talk. I see those things happening. I don't see the county commissioners and the city council worrying about national issues and arguing about things that they can't control when we have things here that we can. And I see under her leadership the ability of working together and listening to the other side. She's already said, I will listen and I will change if there has to be an opinion change. Who says the city can't change? Who says the county can't change? But working together, it's going to be for the benefit of all of us.
Going back to the state just for a second, and we're just about at time, what is the top issue that you believe affects the state that we should be dealing with right now?
Kerwin, higher education, how we're going to deal with not just higher education, but with education, how that will take place.
And how we afford it?
Yeah, how we can afford it, or how can we not afford to do it? Can we afford not to do it? How much do you put on education? I think education's it's really important. How do you get that all done? But you got to make sure that the money, and what was my phrase on this boulevard out here? Take the wealth out of Commonwealth. Remember that years ago? On Commonwealth Avenue? Accountability within the school system, state and local. We don't have those debates that much anymore. It's easy to come in and say I want $8 million in new money this year. When, there was money that, there's probably something I almost said that I won't say, of money that they got that they shouldn't have gotten in the last budget. So how that all comes back and how you have those conversations. We don't really have those gnashings of teeth and sitting down talking about the issues of pontoon boats and copper and stuff in the school system that come up missing or whatever. You don't have those conversations anymore because people don't take the time. So people can do a lot of things in a lot of different areas now that they're never called out for.
We're going to leave it there. We are out of time. Thank you, Ron, for joining us, and thank you for our audience. That's all the time we have for tonight. We hope you will like us on Facebook. We hope you'll follow us on Twitter. We hope you will send us your comments and suggestions to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That's feedback@theflipsidetv.com. Most importantly, we hope you will join us next week for another episode of The Flip Side. Good night.